Wind clawed at the shutters and the boards groaned beneath the weight of night. A lone horse staggered through the moonlit dust, its saddle streaked with dried blood and grit. Boots thudded onto the porch, slow, heavy, measured. The rancher stepped forward, shotgun that had rested across his lap now hanging loose at his side. The animal wheezed and trembled as a small figure slid half off the saddle, collapsing into the dirt without a cry, without a name. Lantern light spilled from the doorway, casting a thin yellow glow across the yard. He crossed the gravel, each crunch sharp against the restless wind. A torn, filthy cloth was tied tight around the girl's shoulder. Her voice barely rose above the night. "Please, don't take the cloth off. The wind stole the rest." He knelt beside her. No words, no questions, just action. Leather creaked as he lifted her upright, her warmth seeping through his sleeve, the warmth of blood. The knot resisted, slick with sweat and grit, but his fingers worked with the steady patience of fence wire. Lantern glow revealed her face, pale, bruised, eyes wide and distant. The cloth loosened and peeled back. Fresh blood welled beneath, and a faint brand emerged. Cruel lines burned into fading flesh. His jaw set hard enough to crack. A memory flickered. Saloon smoke, a banker's sly grin, the stink of stolen land. Past and present collided until they were one breath. She sagged against him as the wind carried the metallic scent of iron and dust, a promise of riders yet unseen. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a banker smiled. He pulled her closer, shotgun cold against his back, while the night itself held its breath. Hoofbeats will come with the dawn. Dawn crept gray across the ridge, thin light bleeding over the frostbit boards. The stove ticked as it warmed, bitter coffee boiling in a dented pot. He moved without sound, boots soft on the planks, hands sure as rope knots. The girl sat rigid in the chair, eyes shadowed, bandage dark with sleep-stale blood. Each time his cloth brushed her wound, she flinched, a quick twitch she tried to hide. He didn't stop, no words, just the steady scrape of fabric against skin. Who did this? His voice was low, gravel caught in a dry throat. No answer. Only the flick of her eyes toward the tree line beyond the window. He followed the look, saw hoofprints pressed deep in the cold dirt, leading back toward town. The banker's gang. Same pattern, same trail. The same men who once carved his own life apart. The coffee hissed and spat. He poured, the smell sharp, metallic. He tasted iron in the first swallow. Old scars itched beneath his shirt, memories rising like smoke. Outside, a hawk wheeled against the pale sky, wings slicing the morning hush. Inside, her breath trembled in the quiet. "They'll come," she whispered. The words barely made the air. He nodded once. No promise, no comfort. Just the click of metal as he checked each shell, one by one. The sound small and final against the endless plain. The wind shifted, carrying a faint echo, hoofbeats far off. Too far to name but close enough to feel. Smoke slid into memory like a slow knife. One blink and Dawn's pale cabin blurred into a night years gone. He smelled it first, gunpowder and cheap whiskey. A banker's grin across a saloon table. Promises of fair price, quick papers. Land for gold, he signed. The banker lied. Then came fire. Windows shattered, rifles cracked. Families scattered into the black. He fought until the sky itself turned red. A bullet ripped his side, carving a scar that never cooled. By sunrise, the ranch was ash, the law a joke, and the badge on his chest nothing but tin. He left it in the dirt and walked away, building fences instead of friendships, walls instead of words. The cabin sharpened back into view. Lantern light trembled over the girl's shoulder as she sat stiff in the chair. He knelt, studying the brand burned into her skin. The lines, crooked, cruel, matched the memory on his own flesh. His fingers hovered, tracing air above the wound. Her eyes lifted, locking on his. Fear met recognition. Two victims separated by years but bound by the same man's mark. Her breath hitched. His jaw tightened. Outside, wind combed the grass and carried a distant sound. Hoofbeats. Faint but steady, riding the ridge like a warning. He stood, scar pulling against his ribs, and reached for the shotgun leaning near the door. The past hadn't stayed buried. It was riding back, steel in its hand and smoke on its breath. Late afternoon set the sky ablaze. Crimson bled across the ridge, staining boards and dust alike. He stood on the porch, shotgun across his lap, eyes tracing the horizon. 5 shapes appeared on the ridge road, silhouettes dark against fire-colored sky. Hooves drummed faintly through the wind. The leader dismounted. Boots crunched gravel with careful weight, a polite smile too wide. Poison words slipped from his mouth, slow and deliberate. She belongs to the banker. The rancher didn't flinch, didn't speak. Shotgun rested across his lap, barrel cold, steady. Silence stretched long. Wind teased through the shutters, rattling boards, carrying dust and the faint metallic scent of horses. The leader stepped closer. Hand brushed the holster. Fingers tense on leather. The girl gripped the rancher's sleeve, silent plea buried in wide eyes. He answered only with a slow shake of the head. No words, no promises. The rider spat on the gravel. Dust spiraled. A soft warning left in the dirt. Tonight, we'll collect. Hoofbeats faded down the ridge road, swallowed by wind, but the storm lingered, weight heavy in the air. Inside, the girl paced, eyes darting toward every shadow. Boards creaked beneath her feet. He moved to the rifle, checking shells one by one, fingers brushing cold metal. Coffee sat abandoned, bitter and cold on the counter. They'll be back, he muttered, low and unyielding. Wind shifted again. Dust swirled. The ridge seemed to wait. Hooves were gone, but the promise of danger hung, thick as smoke. Twilight settled like smoke over the plains, curling through fence posts and dry grass. Boards creaked under his boots as he saddled the fastest horse, leather stiff and cold beneath his hands. He mounted, reins taut, hooves kicking up dust that hung in the dimming light. Old friend, old debt. He rode hard, muscles burning, heart steady. The next ranch came into view, a simple door, shuttered windows, but it stayed closed. No help here. Fear traveled faster than courage across these plains, and courage was thin. He spurred the horse onward, dust swallowing his path, wind tugging at his coat. No one answered. No one came. The weight of the ridge pressed against his back, the horizon stretching empty and indifferent. On the ride back, the girl's voice echoed in his mind, faint but insistent. They'll come. He swallowed the taste of iron in the air, eyes sharp against darkening shapes. Stars pricked the sky, cold points above a wide, silent plain. At the crest of the ridge, the cabin appeared, a pale glow against the gathering dark. Lantern flickered inside, lonely and small. He tightened his grip on the reins. Muscles tense, back straight, boots biting into stirrups. Storm promised. Storm certain. Hoofbeats in the distance, the rustle of grass, the sigh of wind. They all whispered the same thing. Night was coming, and they were not yet done. The plains stretched wide, empty and unforgiving. But he rode, silent and determined, toward the faint light of the cabin, carrying the weight of past scars and the knowledge that danger would meet him there. Night hit like a hammer. Dust swirled in the yard, caught in lantern light that trembled and then shattered with the first shot. Gunpowder stung the air, sharp and metallic. 5 riders thundered down the ridge road, hooves drumming like drums of war. He moved like shadow over boards, silent, precise. Shotgun rose and the roar split the dark. One rider tumbled, horse screaming, hooves slamming the dirt. Sparks from the muzzle danced against the boards. Inside, she crouched by the hearth, pistol trembling in small hands. She barely knew its weight, barely knew how to aim, but instinct took over. A window exploded, glass shattered, wind cut through, and she fired. Silence fell like a blanket. Another rider hit the ground, still. The leader stormed the porch, revolver blazing. Sparks lit the boards like fireflies, smoke curling in the cold night air. The rancher met him head-on, tackle hard, fists and grit clashing with leather and bone. Blood spattered. Knife flashed in the lantern glow, reflecting red and gold. Then stillness. The leader gasped, voice rough, final, venomous. "The banker! He'll be back." Wind swept across the yard, carrying the acrid scent of gunpowder, pine, and cold dirt. Horses whinnied in retreat. The girl stepped out slowly, pistol shaking, eyes wide, chest heaving. He met her gaze, voice silent, jaw tight. No words, no questions. Only the sound of their breathing, mingling with the settling dust, echoing against the dying night. The ridge was quiet again, but the storm was far from over. Lanterns lay broken. Hooves had faded, but shadows lingered in every corner of the yard, every creak of the boards, every whisper of wind through the grass. One promise remained, sharp as a knife edge. They would return. Dawn crawled over the ridge, pale light brushing boards and dust alike. The yard was quiet. Bodies lay still, tangled with the remnants of night's chaos. He moved among them, boots sinking into cold soil, shovel scraping with muted rhythm. No ceremony, no words, just work. She joined him, hands raw, palms streaked with dirt. Eyes steady, no tears, no prayers, just the scrape of shovels against earth. Together they worked, side by side, each mound a quiet defiance against the violence that had come for them. The wind lifted, stirring dust, carrying the faint scent of iron and pine. Inside, the stove ticked. Coffee brewed bitter and strong. He cleaned her wound with careful, steady hands, cloth damp and warm. She didn't flinch this time, her eyes watching, wary but present. "You saved me," she whispered, voice soft against the quiet room. He shook his head slowly. "No, we survived." Outside, a hawk circled high, wings slicing through the pale morning sky. Shadows stretched across the ridge, stretching the yard into long lines of light and dark. The storm had passed, for now, but the plains remained restless, wind sighing through fence posts and tall grass, whispering that night and danger would return. Someday, inevitably. They stood together a moment, listening to the quiet, breathing in the faint smoke of lanterns long gone. No words, no questions, just presence. Evening settled soft over the porch, golden light fading into violet shadows. She leaned against the rail, bandage clean, eyes fixed on the horizon where ridges met sky. He sat beside her, shotgun resting across his lap, weight steady, silent. Silence stretched between them, thick, heavy, but peaceful, carrying the quiet of survival and the ache of what had come before. She turned, voice quiet but firm. "Who are you in this story?" The question hung, more than words, more than the ridge or the town beyond. Camera wide, the two silhouettes framed in fading light. A town still ruled by a banker whose reach had not ended, whose shadow lingered like smoke in the corners of the valley. If you're still here listening, remember, courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just staying when others run. Wind swept across the porch, lifting dust and carrying the scent of sage and smoke from the burned fields. A distant hoofbeat sounded once, faint but certain, echoing over hills that had seen too much yet held them still. The ridge, the porch, the quiet, they held a moment suspended between endings and beginnings. Two figures, breathing in rhythm with the land, watched the night settle, knowing storms would come again, but ready to meet them, together.